All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into the carnivore diet, but we're looking at it specifically for men's health. We're going to talk about all the big claims, weight loss, fixing your hormones, and we're definitely going to tackle the big controversies head-on. So let's dive in.
So this is really the question, isn't it? Is an all-meat diet the secret to finally losing that dad bod? Can it actually fix your testosterone? Or is it just a heart attack on a plate like so many people worry about? Let's break down what our sources have to say about this.
All right, first up, let's set the stage with what we're calling the modern man's dilemma.
So take a look at this list. Does any of it hit a little close to home? We're talking about that stubborn weight that just won't leave your midsection, feeling totally drained all the time. And then there's the more serious stuff, inflammation, ED, even prostate worries. The sources we're digging into today frame these as the big reasons why men start looking for a really radical change in the first place.
Okay, so if those are the problems, what's the proposed answer? That brings us to section 2, the carnivore answer.
Now, according to cardiac surgeon Dr. Philip Odia, this is way more than just, eating a bunch of steak. He actually sees it having two main purposes. First, it's like the ultimate elimination diet. It's a tool to help you figure out exactly what foods are causing inflammation in your body. But second, he argues it's the most sustainable, ancestrally consistent way for us to eat for long-term health. A two-for-one deal, really.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. What about the elephant in the room? The biggest fear that comes up anytime someone mentions an all-meat diet. Well, let's get right into it in section 3, debunking the dangers.
Yeah, this is the big one, isn't it? I mean, for decades, we have been told that red meat and saturated fat are the enemy, that they lead straight to heart attacks. So what on earth do the experts in these sources have to say about that?
Well, the argument here is that maybe, just maybe, we've been aiming at the wrong bad guy. Just look at this chart. According to Dr. Chaffy's data, having diabetes is correlated with a 10 times higher risk of heart disease. Metabolic syndrome, that's a whole mess of things like high blood pressure and belly fat. That's a 6 times increase. Now, look at high LDL cholesterol. It's way down at 1.3x. The point being made here is that your metabolic health is the real driver, not just cholesterol.
And just to really hammer this home, listen to this direct quote from Dr. Anthony Chaffy. He says, and I quote, "Cholesterol simply is not a problem. It's not the cause of heart disease." I think that's been thoroughly and just completely debunked. I mean, that's a really bold statement. He's basically saying heart disease is about inflammation and metabolism, not about the cholesterol you eat.
And to back that claim up, the sources point to some serious research. A huge 2020 study in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found, well, get this, no evidence linking the saturated fat you eat to heart disease. In fact, they found it might even be protective against stroke. That's pretty much the opposite of what we've been told for years.
So, that's the counterargument to the whole heart disease fear. But what about actual people? Let's look at some of the real-world stories and results shared in the source material.
Okay, meet Dante. His story is, wow, it's a wild ride. It starts back in 2002 when he had his gallbladder removed, something he blames on low-fat dieting. Fast forward to 2018, he's on testosterone replacement therapy for ED and his T levels are in the tank. Then, in 2021, he makes the switch to carnivore. And now, at age 50, he says he's in the best shape of his entire life, he's off all his meds, and his testosterone has naturally climbed back up into the high 500s.
And Dante's story isn't a one-off. This slide kind of sums up the kinds of transformations these guys talk about. Going from having man boobs to actual pecs, or from dealing with ED to everything working normally again. And a really powerful example of this, just an amazing story, comes from a guy named Carrie.
And check out this quote. It's such a personal, incredible moment. Carrie had apparently had an irregular heartbeat his whole life since he was a kid. He said, "My wife and I were watching TV. She had her head on my chest. She's like, 'Your heart isn't beating irregularly anymore.'" Just like that. His wife noticed it before he even did. That's a profound change.
So, after hearing stories like that, you might be getting a little curious, right? Like, okay, how would someone even start something like this? Well, the advice from these sources is to keep it super simple.
The whole idea is to get away from all the complicated counting and strict rules. So, step 1, just eat when you're actually hungry. Learn to listen to your body's real hunger signals, not just emotional cravings. Step 2, don't overthink it. Just eat meat until you feel full and satisfied. That's it. And step 3, you use fat as your tool. When you're first starting, you might need more fat for energy. Down the road, if you want to burn your own body fat, you can dial the dietary fat back a bit. It's all about listening to your body, not a spreadsheet.
But, if you're the kind of person who really wants a number to start with, here's a good benchmark. Aim for about 1 gram of protein for every pound of your goal body weight. Simple as that.
All right, now let's zoom in on what might be the biggest reason a lot of men are drawn to this in the first place: the promise of fixing your hormones and naturally boosting testosterone.
A huge concern people have is about the hormones in meat. But from the perspective of our sources, this chart really puts that fear into perspective. Look at this. A 3-ounce serving of hormone-treated beef has about 3.9 nanograms of estrogen. Okay, now look at a single birth control pill. 35,000 nanograms. And then look at soy, which can have over 1 million nanograms of plant-based estrogens, or phytoestrogens. The argument here is that if you're worried about hormones, you might be looking in the wrong place.
So how is this diet supposed to optimize testosterone? Well, according to the sources, it's a 4-part strategy. First, you get rid of the things that mess with your hormones, like those phytoestrogens from plants. Second, you give your body the actual building blocks it needs to make testosterone, and that's cholesterol. Third, something really interesting. Nutrients in red meat like carnitine are said to increase your testosterone receptors, so your body gets better at using the testosterone it has. And finally, as you lose body fat, you lower your body's production of estrogen. It's a full system approach.
So as we start to wrap this up, I want to leave you with one last really powerful idea that comes from one of our sources.
This is that analogy from Carrie, and it really makes you stop and think. He says, you wouldn't see a deer out in the wild with man boobs, with arthritis, or crippled over. You'd be like, wow, what is wrong with that deer? But then he says, you go around, look at humans, and almost every human has those issues. We just see these things as normal for us, but in any other animal, we'd see it as a sign of sickness. It's a really compelling way to reframe how we think about our health.
And that brings us right to our final big question. The core argument being made in all this material is that so many of the chronic diseases we just accept as a normal part of getting older, well, maybe they're not normal at all. Maybe they're just a direct result of us eating a diet we were never meant to eat. So, are our modern illnesses simply a product of our modern, processed diet? That's the question we'll leave you with.